My parents abandoned me as a child because I wasn't as smart as my twin, but when they tried to reconnect years later, I introduced them to my new family and it didn't go well. 10 years ago, when I was 12, I lived in the countryside with my uncle, my dad's older brother. My parents sent me away because they thought that my twin was better than me and that I was a problem for them. But this was the start of an amazing and life-changing experience for me. I used to feel like I wasn't as smart as my sister. Both of my parents were doctors and they wanted us to become doctors too, but I wasn't interested in that. I liked creative things and that's what I wanted to pursue. It was hard because my parents didn't support me and instead put a lot of pressure on me. They would always compare me to my sister, which made things even harder. This treatment started when I was very young, but as I got older, it got worse and I found it hard to focus on anything. By the time I was 12 and in middle school, I was doing so badly in my classes that I was failing most of them, even though I was trying my best. My teachers always complained about me, thinking I was lazy and not trying hard enough. People at school also compared me to my brilliant twin sister, and it was tough. I would cry myself to sleep every night because every day, my parents would remind my sister how much they loved her and how much of a disappointment I was. One night, things got really bad. I lashed out at my parents when they insulted me about my grades, and they grounded me for 2 weeks. I made a tough decision to leave home without a clear plan of where to go. I didn't get far and ended up at a nearby park, feeling scared and alone in the dark. I was found there in the early morning, and the police had to be called to help. After being taken back home, my family decided to send me to live with my uncle and his family in the countryside. When my parents told me they were sending me to live with my uncle and his family, I begged them not to do it. I promised I would be better and never let them down again or try to run away. But they didn't care and said I had disappointed them too much and they couldn't handle it anymore. They had another child to look after, and they couldn't spend all their time caring for someone who seemed to be consistently unhelpful. I don't believe that was entirely accurate, as they devoted most of their attention to my sister. They hardly paid any attention to me, except when they made fun of my poor performance at school. I pleaded with them to stop because I didn't want to be apart from them, especially my sister, who was the only family member I felt close to. However, they didn't listen and did what they felt they had to do. They made me say bye to my sister and then didn't even let her come with me on the way to my uncle's house. Once I was there, I just couldn't stop crying for the next few weeks, and I just wanted to go back home. I tried calling my parents, but they didn't pick up any of my calls and ignored me. My uncle and aunt were helpful and supportive during that time, but my parents were not there for me. After a few weeks, I decided to accept my fate and make peace with it. I was only able to stay in touch with my sister secretly, as she didn't have a cell phone, and I had to call her from my uncle's phone whenever my parents were away. Back when social media was just getting popular, my sister and I found a way to stay in touch. She would message me on the computer, and sometimes we'd manage to talk on the phone when she said it was safe. We've stayed close all these years and she's kept me updated on everything that's been happening with our parents. She even let me know that our parents were planning to get in touch with me a couple of weeks ago, so I was mentally prepared for that. I haven't spoken to my parents in 10 years. At first, they didn't want to talk to me after they left me at my uncle's house. Then, after spending a few years with my uncle, I decided I didn't want to reach out to them either. They had abandoned me, and I felt that was the end of our story. Ever since I moved in with my aunt and uncle, my life has improved a lot. They don't put as much pressure on me as my parents did, so I'm doing better in school. I'm not a top student like my sister, but at least I'm not failing my classes. My aunt and uncle also let me participate in school plays and sports, which my parents didn't allow because they were worried about my grades. While living with my parents, I wasn't allowed to talk to boys, but thankfully, my uncle and aunt didn't impose such strict rules. They encouraged me to socialize and have friends over. It was through this freedom that I met my husband. We've been together for 7 years, having met in high school and attending the same college. After graduating last year, we had a small wedding ceremony a week later. Now, we have our own house not far from my uncle and aunt, and we often visit each other, especially to introduce them to our new son. I'm currently on maternity leave, so I won't be returning to work for a few more weeks. My sister and I have been open with each other for the past few years. When she turned 18, she decided to stop hiding our relationship from our parents because she felt there was nothing they could do about it. She was the maid of honor at my wedding and is also the godmother to my child. During her recent visit, she informed me that our parents were planning to visit me. Still unaware of my marriage and baby, they had been cut off from most family members after abandoning me, which was a very hurtful thing to do. They had no idea about my life, and my sister, feeling it unnecessary, chose not to share any details about me when they asked. However, after 10 years, they were beginning to feel some regret for their actions and were considering reaching out to me. My sister felt it was her duty to inform me, allowing me to decide how to handle the situation and avoid being caught off guard when they eventually contacted me to request a visit. A few days later, my parents contacted me through social media, asking if they could come and visit. I was taken aback by their message. Instead of an apology, it was a simple request to visit. Initially, I was upset and considered not replying at all. Then, I had a better idea. I decided to invite them over and show them how great my life was without them. I shared my address and invited them along with my uncle, aunt, and sister for dinner at my place. My husband and son would also be there. When everyone gathered at my house last weekend, it was quite surprising as I hadn't informed my uncle and aunt about my parents' presence. The atmosphere was awkward, given that I hadn't seen my parents in a decade and the whole family had distanced themselves from them. Even my uncle and aunt had cut ties with my parents. It all started when my parents failed to fulfill their promises of financial support and staying in touch while I lived with my uncle. They kept sending money every month, but they didn't bother to stay in touch with me and seemed relieved to be done with me. That wasn't what my uncle had agreed to, and he was angry that my parents were neglecting me emotionally. He didn't mind taking care of me, so he spoke up for me and told the rest of the family what my dad was doing. As a result, everyone else cut ties with my father. This created a lot of tension between them, but my dad still sent money until I turned 18. After that, there was no contact between them at all. When we greeted each other, we were supposed to have dinner together, but before that, I decided to make a toast. I made an already awkward situation even more uncomfortable because I wanted to make my parents feel sorry and bad. So I got up and started making a speech about how beautiful the last 10 years of my life had been, compared to the first 12. I recently gave a speech to thank my uncle, aunt, husband, and sister for their support and love over the years. They've been there for me when I needed them the most. However, I decided not to mention my parents in my speech because I didn't feel like I had anything to thank them for. As I spoke, they kept their eyes downcast and stayed silent. When I finished, I took it a step further and told my parents that I was ready to introduce them to my new family. This announcement shocked them to the core. My mother burst into tears and ran off, leaving the rest of us in an awkward, tense silence during dinner. No one stayed for dessert, which I was relieved about. I didn't like my parents, but I regretted what I had done. I haven't had the chance to talk to my uncle and aunt yet, but both my sister and my husband believe I went too far by responding to my parents' messages if I didn't want to engage with them. They think I shouldn't have insulted them. They questioned whether it was right for Ida to invite my parents over for dinner and then embarrass them. Update 1. The comments so far have been quite split on whether I should apologize to my parents. But it's generally agreed upon that I should at least speak with my uncle and aunt. Since the situation with my parents is still undecided, I decided to reach out to my uncle today. It's been a week since the family dinner I hosted, and due to our busy schedules, we haven't been able to communicate much. There was still a sense of awkwardness, so we avoided speaking to each other to prevent making things uncomfortable. Today, I took the initiative by calling my uncle. Upon reaching him, I immediately apologized for not giving them a heads up about inviting my parents to the dinner. He admitted he was surprised but eventually moved past it. He hadn't contacted me earlier because he wasn't sure if I was okay after that night, given that I was quite upset. He said things had gotten pretty awkward that day, but he assured me that it was all water under the bridge and it didn't matter. After that, I called my aunt and apologized to her as well, and she had a similar reaction. Now that I've apologized to both of them and that's out of the way, I don't feel that guilty anymore. I'm reluctant to apologize to my parents because of all the challenges I faced during my childhood. I don't think anyone would blame me for my behavior given what I had to endure. Besides, they haven't apologized to me either. I spoke to my husband about it, and he initially suggested that I apologize, but I explained to him that while my actions at the dinner were inappropriate, the way I was treated in the past was also unacceptable. He understood and didn't insist. I had a similar conversation with my sister, and although she was doubtful, I stood my ground. Lately, my sister and I had a conversation about our parents and the situation we were in. She made it clear that she understands that it's ultimately my decision on how to handle things because I'm the one who was wronged. Our parents have been keeping a low profile, and my sister and I haven't been able to reach them. I anticipate that they will reach out to me soon, possibly to demand an apology or stir up some drama. I also want to clarify that my sister is not just trying to keep the peace with our parents, and even if she is, I'm okay with that. She acknowledged that what they did to me was wrong, but she was young and couldn't stand up for me at the time. When we were kids, my sister didn't like the idea, but we were too young for our opinions to count. She did her best to stay in touch with me, and that's what matters. Now, she stays in touch with our parents because they're getting older and she doesn't want to feel guilty about abandoning them. There's nothing more to it than that. Please don't blame her for anything, it's not necessary. We have a lot of love for each other, so unfair accusations against her aren't right. As for what happened, I knew my parents wouldn't take it well. They're not the type to let things go easily, so I was ready for some kind of reaction from them. Today, it finally occurred, 10 days after the dinner I had organized. They chose to make the incident public and shared all the details on social media. I found it quite unexpected because they are not usually very active on social media, but for this particular incident, they chose to make a post about it. As I anticipated, the post was heavily one-sided, only detailing their hurt without acknowledging their past actions. If it had been aimed at my family, it wouldn't have bothered me since my family doesn't like my parents due to their past behavior of abandoning me. However, they slyly tagged my coworkers and even my husband's coworkers, despite my husband having no involvement in the situation. Of course, my colleagues didn't know about my difficult relationship with my parents, so they were really surprised when they were tagged in a social media post. They started calling and texting me right away. Since I was on maternity leave and busy with my son, I hadn't seen the post. When they told me about it, I was completely shocked. I was completely caught off guard by the situation because I never saw it coming. I suspect that the person who posted about me had been snooping around my social media to find my coworkers, using the photos I've posted with them and tagging them. It seems like they spent a week stalking me to figure out who my work friends are, to ruin my reputation. When I saw the post, I was shocked at first, but then I gathered myself and decided to comment, setting the record straight. I had nothing to hide, and I wanted people to know the truth. I explained how I was the victim in all of this and that what happened at the dinner was unexpected but not unjustified. I shared the entire story, detailing how they had dropped me off at my uncle's house years ago and then cut off contact with me. I want to make sure that I remember the following text, and even when they had reached out to me, they had not apologized to me, and after they got to my place, they still hadn't apologized. If they had done that, I might have reconsidered saying the things that I did. But anyway, in my opinion, what I did was not wrong. I also clarified the same to my friends at work, who had been tagged in the post. I apologized to them on my parents' behalf because they did not need or deserve to get caught up in our drama, and it was ridiculous of my parents to do something like this. I'm pretty pissed off because they could have just targeted me and kept things clean, but dragging my coworkers into this, that's just below the belt and unacceptable. I have been waiting for my husband to get home. I did not want to bother him at work with this today because he had told me that he had an important meeting with a client. Otherwise, I might have contacted him and told him about this, but honestly, this is just petty drama and I can deal with this on my own. I've had a conversation with my sister, and she believes that our parents are acting irrationally right now. They probably couldn't handle the disrespect and lost their temper. However, that doesn't excuse their behavior. I haven't informed my uncle or aunt about this yet because I think they would have strong reactions and they're currently busy with work. It's now 8 in the evening, and my uncle, aunt, and sister are at my house. My husband is also back from work, and we're all trying to figure out how to handle this situation. I don't want to involve a lawyer, as some of you have suggested, because I don't have the time or energy to go through the legal process. I'd like to handle this situation myself and avoid involving lawyers for as long as I can. If the person doesn't take down the post, I may need to contact a lawyer and consider filing a lawsuit for defamation. But for now, I want to do everything possible to get them to remove the post. Many people have messaged them asking to take it down, but they haven't responded or taken any action. They also haven't deleted my comment, so anyone who sees the post will know the truth. This is concerning because a lot of people have already seen the post, including my coworkers and acquaintances who have asked me about it. I'm not sure how it ended up on their feed, probably because I was tagged in the post. I removed the tag, but it's still appearing on people's feeds. I think there might be a glitch with the app. It's quite frustrating because people keep asking me about it, and I'm tired of answering the same questions. They could just read my comment and be done with it, but for some reason, they keep reaching out to me to ask about it repeatedly. I find the situation increasingly bothersome, and I just want it to pass. Honestly, I'm hoping I won't need to deal with HR, as that could cause trouble for me. I don't want my reputation at work to be tainted because of my parents. Currently, my family and I are still working on finding a way to persuade them to remove it, but they are not responding to me. Hey, just a quick update, my sister went to visit my parents today. She plans to talk to them in person about the issue we've been having, and hopefully, they'll agree to resolve it. If they still refuse, we might have to take legal action, but I hope it doesn't come to that. Right now, I just want to enjoy my maternity leave with my son, not deal with their unnecessary drama. For an hour, I had no idea what was going on, but just half an hour ago, she told me that she had spoken to our parents, and said that they were very upset, which is why they had made that post and tagged my coworkers. It turned out that my hunch was right. Somehow, they had managed to track down my colleagues and their social media profiles by stalking me online. It was unsettling, but honestly, that's the least of my worries right now. When I spoke to her, she mentioned that she had a lengthy conversation with them. They agreed to take the post down, on the condition that I apologize to them first. I immediately informed my sister that I wouldn't agree to that. I stood my ground, knowing I had done nothing wrong. Thankfully, she understood and made it clear to my parents that I wouldn't apologize for something unjust. I made it clear that if they didn't remove the post, I would take legal action. After nearly an hour of discussion, they agreed to take it down and put an end to it. However, they conveyed through my sister that they were cutting me out of their lives and also out of the inheritance. I don't care about any of that, I just want that post to be taken down. They can keep their inheritance to themselves, it holds no importance to me. My husband and I are doing pretty well career-wise, and we know that we are going to be rich. And even if we are not, I'm fine with that, at least I don't have to rely on them for money. And my sister told me that she told them the same thing, so at least they are aware of my feelings on this. Hey everyone, now that everything is sorted out, I can't wait to cherish every moment of my maternity leave with my son. Your support has been incredible, and I'm truly grateful for it. Thank you all so much. Hey everyone. It's time to get pumped up and show some love by hitting that subscribe button on the YouTube channel. Don't forget to smash the bell icon to stay updated with all the thrilling content. Thanks a million for tuning in. I'm super stoked to see you in the next video. You all are awesome.